Imagine this. You're lying in bed, wrapped in the softest blanket you own, the glow of a candle flickering on your nightstand. You've just finished a long, luxurious bath, followed by a guided meditation that promised to center your soul. You feel fine, not ecstatic, not transformed, just fine. And yet, there's a nagging voice in the back of your mind, whispering something you can't quite ignore. Is this all there is? This is the seduction of comfort. It's subtle, insidious, and it wears the mask of self-care. We've been sold the idea that self-care is the ultimate act of self-love, a way to shield ourselves from the chaos of the world. But what if this shield is also a cage? What if, in our pursuit of comfort, we've traded the raw, messy beauty of life for a sanitized, hollow version of existence? Think about it. When was the last time you truly challenged yourself? When was the last time you faced something difficult, not because you had to, but because you knew it would make you stronger? In a world that constantly tells us to treat ourselves, have we forgotten how to endure, how to struggle, how to grow? The philosopher Carl Jung once said, "There is no coming to consciousness without pain." But in our modern obsession with self-care, we've become experts at avoiding pain. We've turned self-care into a form of escapism, a way to numb ourselves rather than confront the deeper, darker parts of our psyche. And in doing so, we've created a paradox. The more we try to care for ourselves, the weaker we become. Here's the hard truth. True self-care isn't about comfort. It's about courage. It's about facing the parts of yourself that you've been avoiding. The fears, the insecurities, the wounds that never quite healed. It's about stepping into the storm, not because it's easy, but because you know it's the only way to truly grow. So, ask yourself this. Are you nurturing yourself, or are you numbing yourself? Are you building resilience, or are you building walls? And most importantly, what would it mean to care for yourself in a way that doesn't leave you weaker but stronger? The answers won't come easily. They'll require you to confront the uncomfortable, to question the very foundations of what you've been told about self-care. But if you're willing to take that step, if you're willing to face the storm, you might just discover a version of yourself you never knew existed. Now, let's dig deeper. Why does this paradox exist? Why does something as seemingly innocent as self-care have the power to weaken us? To understand this, we need to explore the psychological and philosophical roots of our obsession with comfort and how it's been weaponized against us. Picture this. You're scrolling through social media, and every other post is a reminder to put yourself first. An influencer in a pristine white bathrobe sips herbal tea while extolling the virtues of setting boundaries. A motivational quote tells you, "You can't pour from an empty cup." It all sounds so reasonable, so empowering. But beneath the surface, there's a darker message. You are fragile. You must protect yourself at all costs. This is the illusion of control. We've been conditioned to believe that if we just follow the right self-care rituals, we can shield ourselves from pain, from failure, from the unpredictability of life. But here's the truth. Life is inherently unpredictable. Pain is inevitable. And no amount of bubble baths or gratitude journals can change that. The philosopher Jean-Paul Sartre once wrote, "Man is condemned to be free." What he meant is that we are thrust into a world where we must make choices, where we must face the consequences of those choices, and where we cannot escape the fundamental uncertainty of existence. But in our modern world, we've tried to outsmart this existential truth. We've created a culture of self-care that promises us control over our emotions, our stress, our lives. And in doing so, we've robbed ourselves of the very thing that makes us human, the ability to endure, to adapt, to grow through adversity. Think about it. When you avoid discomfort, What are you really avoiding? Growth. When you prioritize comfort, what are you really prioritizing? Stagnation. And yet, we've been taught to see this as self-love. We've been sold the idea that self-care is about protecting ourselves from harm. But what if the real harm is the avoidance itself? What if, in our quest for control, we've become prisoners of our own comfort? This is where the psychological roots of the problem lie. Our brains are wired to seek pleasure and avoid pain. It's a survival mechanism, one that served us well in the wild, but has become maladaptive in the modern world. We've taken this instinct and turned it into a lifestyle, one that prioritizes immediate gratification over long-term growth. And in doing so, we've created a society that is increasingly fragile, increasingly unable to cope with the challenges of life. But there's hope. Because once you see the illusion for what it is, you can begin to break free. You can begin to reclaim the parts of yourself that you've been taught to fear, the parts that are messy, uncomfortable, and ultimately transformative. So, ask yourself this: what are you really protecting yourself from? And what would happen if you stopped trying to control the uncontrollable? The answers might scare you, but they might also set you free. Now that we've uncovered the psychological and philosophical roots of this paradox, let's examine the consequences. Because this isn't just a theoretical problem, it's a silent, insidious force that shapes our lives in ways we rarely notice. Imagine this. You're at work, and a challenging project lands on your desk. Your first instinct is to feel overwhelmed, to retreat into the safety of your self-care rituals. You tell yourself, "I deserve a break," and you spend the evening binge-watching your favorite show instead of tackling the problem. The next day, the project is still there, looming larger than ever. You feel even more overwhelmed, even more tempted to retreat. And so the cycle continues. This is the silent erosion of resilience. Every time you choose comfort over challenge, every time you prioritize avoidance over action, you weaken your ability to cope with adversity. It's not that self-care is inherently bad. It's that it's often used as a crutch, a way to avoid the difficult but necessary work of building resilience. Neurologically, this makes perfect sense. Our brains are wired to take the path of least resistance. When we repeatedly choose comfort over discomfort, we reinforce neural pathways that make it easier to retreat and harder to persevere. Over time, this creates a feedback loop. The more we avoid discomfort, the less capable we become of handling it. And the less capable we become, the more we rely on self-care to numb the growing sense of inadequacy. But the consequences go even deeper. Because this isn't just about individual behavior, it's about societal conditioning. We live in a culture that glorifies comfort and demonizes struggle. We're told that stress is the enemy, that we should eliminate it at all costs. But here's the truth: stress is not the enemy. In fact, it's essential for growth. The psychologist Viktor Frankl, who survived the horrors of the Holocaust, wrote extensively about the importance of meaning in the face of suffering. He argued that it's not the absence of struggle that makes life worth living. It's the ability to find purpose in the struggle. But in our modern world, we've lost sight of this truth. We've become so focused on avoiding struggle that we've forgotten how to derive meaning from it. And the result is a society that is increasingly fragile, increasingly unable to cope with the challenges of life. We see it in the rising rates of anxiety and depression, in the growing sense of emptiness that so many people feel despite their material comfort. We see it in the way we've turned self-care into a form of escapism, a way to numb ourselves rather than confront the deeper, darker parts of our existence. But it doesn't have to be this way, because once you see the silent erosion for what it is, you can begin to reverse it. You can begin to rebuild your resilience, not by avoiding discomfort, but by embracing it. So, ask yourself this: what would happen if you stopped retreating into comfort and started stepping into challenge? What would happen if you stopped seeing struggle as the enemy and started seeing it as an opportunity for growth? The answers might surprise you, because the truth is, you are far stronger than you've been led to believe. Here's where the story takes a radical turn, because once you see the trap for what it is, a seductive illusion that weakens you under the guise of care, you have a choice. You can continue to play along, retreating into the safety of comfort, or you can rebel. You can choose to step into the discomfort, to embrace the struggle, and to reclaim the strength that's been quietly eroded. Imagine this: you're standing at the edge of a cliff, the wind whipping around you, the ground far below. Your instinct is to step back, to retreat into safety. But something inside you whispers, what if you jumped? Not to your death, but into the unknown, into the possibility of flight. This is the essence of rebellion: the willingness to face fear, to embrace uncertainty, and to discover what lies beyond the edge of comfort. This is not about rejecting self-care entirely. It's about redefining it. True self-care isn't about avoiding pain. It's about building the capacity to endure it. It's about recognizing that growth doesn't happen in the comfort zone. It happens in the struggle, in the moments when you're pushed to your limits and forced to dig deeper than you ever thought possible. Think about the people throughout history who've achieved greatness. They didn't do it by retreating into comfort. They did it by embracing discomfort, by facing their fears head-on, and by refusing to let adversity define them. Viktor Frankl found meaning in the concentration camps. Nelson Mandela emerged from 27 years in prison with a vision of reconciliation. These are extreme examples, but they illustrate a universal truth. Strength is forged in the fire of struggle. So, how do you begin this rebellion? Start small. Identify one area of your life where you've been avoiding discomfort, whether it's a difficult conversation, a challenging project, or a personal goal you've been putting off. Commit to facing it, not because it's easy, but because you know it will make you stronger. Next, reframe your relationship with discomfort. Instead of seeing it as something to be avoided, see it as an opportunity for growth. When you feel the urge to retreat into comfort, ask yourself, what would happen if I leaned into this instead? What might I discover about myself if I stopped running and started facing the storm? Finally, surround yourself with people who challenge you. Seek out those who inspire you to be better, who push you out of your comfort zone, and who remind you of your own strength. Because rebellion is not a solitary act, it's a collective movement, a shared commitment to living fully, deeply, and authentically. This is the radical shift in perspective that changes everything. It's the realization that true self-care isn't about protecting yourself from life. It's about preparing yourself to live it fully. It's about reclaiming your strength, not by avoiding discomfort, but by embracing it. So ask yourself this: what would it feel like to stop running from the storm and start dancing in the rain? What would it feel like to stop seeing yourself as fragile and start seeing yourself as unbreakable? The answers might terrify you, but they might also set you free. Now, we arrive at the final, most profound revelation. This is the truth that redefines everything. The insight that transforms the way you see yourself, your struggles, and the world around you. It's the realization that strength is not something you're born with. It's something you forge in the fire of adversity. Imagine this: you're standing in the middle of a storm, the wind howling around you, the rain soaking through your clothes. You feel small, vulnerable, and utterly exposed. But as you stand there, something shifts. You realize that the storm isn't something to be feared. It's something to be embraced. Because it's in the storm that you discover your strength. It's in the storm that you realize you are not fragile. You are unbreakable. This is the ultimate truth. Strength is born in the struggle. It's not something you find in a bubble bath or a gratitude journal. It's something you earn through effort, through perseverance, through the willingness to face discomfort head-on. And it's something that no one can take away from you. The philosopher Friedrich Nietzsche famously said, "He who has a why to live can bear almost any how." This is the essence of true strength, the ability to find meaning in the struggle, to see adversity not as an obstacle, but as an opportunity. It's the realization that the challenges you face are not here to break you, they're here to make you. But here's the catch. This truth is not something you can simply understand intellectually. It's something you must experience. You must step into the storm, face the discomfort, and discover for yourself what lies on the other side. And when you do, you'll realize that the strength you've been seeking has been inside you all along. So, what does this mean for self-care? It means redefining it entirely. True self-care is not about avoiding the storm. It's about preparing yourself to face it. It's about building the resilience, the courage, and the mindset to not only survive the storm, but to thrive in it. It's about recognizing that the greatest act of self-love is not retreating into comfort, but stepping into challenge. This is the paradigm shift that changes everything. It's the realization that you are not a fragile thing to be protected, but a force to be reckoned with. It's the understanding that the struggles you face are not here to weaken you. They're here to awaken you. So, as you stand there in the storm, ask yourself this: what would it feel like to stop seeing yourself as a victim of circumstance and start seeing yourself as the hero of your own story? What would it feel like to stop running from the storm and start dancing in the rain? The answers might not come easily. They might require you to confront your deepest fears, to question your most deeply held beliefs, and to step into the unknown. But if you're willing to take that step, if you're willing to face the storm, you might just discover a version of yourself you never knew existed. This is the ultimate truth. Strength is not something you find. It's something you become. And the storm is not your enemy. It's your greatest teacher. So step into it, embrace it, and let it transform you.